Licking her dry lips, Ray stood on her tiptoes to reach the cherub plant's wide, curling leaves. She tilted one down, unfurling the rim, and let the dew pooled at its center drip onto her tongue. Its delicious coolness not only quenched her thirst, but also quieted her galloping pulse. Satisfied, and making sure she'd left a few drops for the hand-sized Pix folk who journeyed through the forest on their way home for the summer, she let the leaf bounce back to its normal position. The snap of a twig somewhere to her right earned a twitch from her oversized ears. She stiffened, then dipped to retrieve the bag of mushrooms and roots she dropped at her feet. Tightening her grip, she turned. A hunched she-ogg with watery eyes stood watching, gray skin wrinkled with age and bat-like ears full of white hair to match the tangles hanging around her face. A sketch Ray had once been shown of her grandmother flashed into her mind. This she-ogg was nearly identical. It had never been this convincing before. "You must be lonely foraging here all alone," the she-ogg said. "Why not sit with an old ogg and share breakfast?" "There aren't any other real Oggs living this far south. That's why my parents chose it," Ray said, using all her energy to keep alert. She couldn't let it know how tired she was from sprinting so far. Who knew what tricks it would get up to if it did? "You'll have to try something else." The she-ogg let out a cackle, a noise that no true ogg would ever make, and with a sharp crack, transformed into a short creature covered in wild fur. "We'll let you keep your mushrooms for yourself this time, little ogling," the brag laughed, "but only because you outran my friends before this. Be ready for next time, though." The trees around it rustled and joined in with its gleeful hooting, revealing the other hobgoblins working with it. She should have known they'd band together if they couldn't trick her individually. Then they all snapped their fingers, causing a cloud of smoke to appear, and vanished. Ray kept her eyes trained on the bushes beyond for another few minutes until she was sure they were really gone. She could hear them guffawing still, but it was from a good distance away and growing fainter. Letting out a deep sigh, she leaned against the cherub plant and ran a hand through her cropped black hair. With luck, they'd leave her alone for a while now, and at least she wasn't falling for their tricks as much as she had last month. The smell of her gatherings wafted up from the bag, and her stomach growled, overriding her momentary sense of pride. Breakfast was long overdue. Scanning her surroundings in more detail, she discovered she was much closer to her nest hole than she'd thought, and she set off tracking her way with thoughts of fried mushrooms and boiled roots filling her mind. She came to a stop in front of her parents' nest hole, only a few meters from her own. The familiar tree roots at its entrance were covered in rot shrooms, marking the nest hole unsafe. They'd been growing there for 2 moons already. But until they were gone, Ray couldn't enter to retrieve all the precious things her parents had left behind. The centaur healer she'd sent for to tend them had been very firm about that. The spores that caused the sickness could linger for a year or more. Best to stay away completely. The ache in her chest from how much she missed them hadn't dulled for a moment in those 2 long months. She supposed waiting for a few more couldn't make it any worse. Turning away, she headed to her own hole, trying to ignore how the fresh scent of its turned earth revealed its newness. She pushed aside the fern tendrils at its mouth and lowered herself down into the gloom within. Her eyes adjusted quickly to the dark, her vision every bit as sharp as it was above ground.